and good afternoon. Welcome to the second session of the fall 2022 SunoikisisDC Digital Classics syllabus. This session is specifically on contributing to the papyrological database Papyri.info, and for the purposes of this session we're going to be showing how to add corrections and apparatus entries to that. But we'll start more basic now. We'll first explain what is Papyri.info. We'll explain what the editing interface involves, and we'll also explain what an apparatus entry is for those of you who could use a refresher on any of those things. This session is going to be presented primarily by Lucia Vannini, recently graduated from the University of London, by Marja Vierros at the University of Helsinki, and myself, also at the University of London. And we're also joined by the not at all intimidating expert in Papyri.info, James Cowie, there on your bottom right. If you're watching this live, please feel free to use the live chat feature to the right of the video to ask questions or make comments, and we'll come to those at the end. This video also remains online, so if you're watching this later in time, feel free to make use of the content of this video, and also below the video is a link to a session page which has some readings and some information about the exercise that we're showing you how to do. But without any further ado, I'll hand you over to our first presenter, Lucia, who's going to tell us a little bit about the background of Papyri.info.
So, the Papyri.info platform, launched in 2010, is one of the numerous and valuable resources, text corpora, digitized collections, and word lists, among others, available online for papyrologists, as well as for historians and philologists working on papyrus sources. Papyri.info provides an open access environment called the Papyrological Navigator, with two extensive corpora. Documentary texts merged from the Duke Databank of Documentary Papyri, the oldest digital papyrology project, launched as early as in 1983, and from the more recent digital corpus of literary papyri, metadata and increasingly transcriptions of literary and paraliterary texts. Papyri.info also comprises an innovative feature devised to ensure an appropriate update of its text base, considering the increasing scholarship in the discipline. A dynamic web-based editing tool, termed Papyrological Editor, where registered users can add new items or edit existing ones, drawing from published texts, or even proposing born digital editions or corrections of their own, or reviewed by an editorial board. This makes Papyri.info open to contribution from the whole papyrological community and from any interested user. Papyri.info was born as a joint effort of three papyrological projects: the mentioned Duke Databank of Documentary Papyri, the Heidelberger Gesamtverzeichnis der Griechischen Papyruskunden Ägyptens, or HGV, a long-established and comprehensive metadata database of documentary papyri, which can also be accessed as a resource in its own right, and the formal Advanced Papyrological Information System, or APIS, a union catalog of metadata and images of several papyrus collections, including the most extensive ones in the United States. Subsequently, more collaborations have allowed integrating further datasets: the Trismegistos portal for the study of papyri and inscriptions, which provided more metadata and access to information and statistics on people and places related to each document. The Bibliographie Papyrologique, the most comprehensive bibliographical tool in papyrology, and a checklist of editions, a catalogue of editions, corpora, proceedings, and instruments, of which it also offers standard abbreviations. The primary aim of Papyri.info is to make available data from dimension-related but hitherto separate databases by using a single interface. Therefore, each entry aggregates metadata via the HGV and Trismegistus and APIS if relevant, the papyrus text via the Duke databank or the corpus of literary papyri, provided with a critical apparatus, and digital pictures derived from APIS. Some records also contain new translations, mostly in English, possibly in German as well, produced for the APIS and the HGV projects. The papyrus transcriptions and metadata have been encoded in TEI-based XML, specifically in the custom EPIDOC guidelines for papyrological as well as epigraphical data. This ensured standardization of datasets from different sources, compatibility between them, and long-term usability, since EPIDOC is a TEI-compliant XML format used in several digital classics projects. Moreover, the resource description framework model for expressing relationships between entities was employed to merge collections into one larger database, and therefore to integrate information on the same item in one record. The value of the digital papyrus texts in Papyri.info lies in their ability to be searched altogether as a corpus, both through free searches in the texts themselves, including their apparatuses or in their metadata, and through searches by specific criteria. Search criteria can be combined also together with free text searches in a way that is impossible, or at least very difficult, with printed indices to editions. Furthermore, the interaction with other digital ecosystems, such as metadata databases and collection catalogs, facilitates discovery of and access to related texts, images, information, and bibliographical data. In addition to dynamism and connectivity, another key characteristic of Papyri.info is openness. The project uses open source technology, such as the XML-based EPIDOC markup, publishes its datasets as open data on the GitHub public repository, in combination with the Creative Commons Attribution license, which permits scholarly reuse, and makes available its tooling as open source code, so that all the data and code base may be transformed for future new projects.
Great, thanks, Lucia. Good. So that's the context in which we'll be looking at Papyri.info and at contributing to the texts therein. So I'm going to just for a minute talk about the main feature of the editing interface, which is this language Leiden Plus, which is used to edit papyri, which, as Lucia says, are encoded in EPIDOC XML natively in the database, but there is this editing interface over the front which enables you to use this very simple language to edit the text themselves. Just as a quick reminder, for those of you who need it, The Leiden system is a set of relatively simple, and once you're used to them, easy to remember conventions, brackets, and other diacritics and sigla for recording transcription information and editorial interventions in the text. So, for example, the second line here, these dots beneath the A and the B show that these letters are either damaged or are very scrappily written, and the editor would not be able to interpret them unambiguously without the context of the rest of the word or the rest of the line. Letters that are in square brackets are missing. Dots that are in square brackets are letters that are missing and not restored, etc. So there's all these various different options. The Leiden system is also the basis behind Epidoc, which, as Lucia has mentioned, is a set of guidelines for using TEI XML to record papyrological texts and other kinds of ancient texts. So all of the same features that are encoded in Leiden on the left-hand side there are recorded in XML on the right-hand side. Now, the good news is that you don't need to know anything about the alphabet soup that you're seeing on the right-hand side there if you're using Papyri.info, because of this Leiden Plus language, which effectively means that you are almost entirely going to be editing in Leiden with a couple of small changes. So, for example, here's my point. Leiden Plus is basically Leiden. I'll make that a little bit bigger. I hope this is readable. So this is an edition of the first first 6 lines of a text. I don't remember which text. I should have written that down. And this is the conventional Leiden display of this text that you would get in Papyri.info. And so you have, as you see on line 1 there, you have square brackets around several missing letters, and then the last letter in that lacuna is restored because that D is quite likely to be the second half of the word add, etc. And then at the end of the line, there's a longer lacuna of 15 characters there, and the M, the last visible letter on that line, is presumably damaged. It's presumably partly missing in the same lacuna at the end of the line, and therefore it would be it clearly is an M, but it was not visibly unambiguous, and therefore it's got a dot beneath it. So that's what you get in the general line. And at the beginning there of line 5, you've got the line number, and at the end there you've got a hyphen saying that this is clearly the middle of a word. This line break happens mid-word, etc. In Leiden Plus, it's almost exactly the same. You'll see very few differences in here. The differences that I'll point out, most of these are fairly obvious, is that firstly, we've numbered every line just to be unambiguous. We still only display the 5th lines, but it's numbered every line. Secondly, we use a slightly different convention for these lacunas. Instead of having a number of dots in there, we say, actually, I should have written .7, not question mark, in there, because there are 7 dots as far as I can see being shown there, and on the next line 8 dots, so that should be .7, .8, and there at the end .15 at the end of the lines. The second difference that I see on this page is that we have separated the square brackets around the lacuna from the square brackets around the piece of restored text. This is just to make this valid epidoc in the background. The underdot is exactly the same. It is still there. Again, we've separated this lacuna into 2 parts. The thing which is a little bit difficult to remember for a lot of people, because it's not clear why we do this, is that an abbreviation has a set of parentheses around the entire word, as well as a second set of parentheses around the expanded part, whereas in Leiden it's only the expanded part that has the parentheses around it. Okay, but that's just something you have to remember. And the last thing I noticed on this page, everything else is the same as before, the underdots, square brackets, is that this hyphen at the end of line 5 has been moved from the end of line 5 to the beginning of line 6. That's just something that made it easier to process, but that's just something, again, you'll have to remember when when working in Leiden Plus, if you were editing from this. So you can see there's very little difference actually, apart from those things I've pointed out. The vast majority of the time, you'll simply copy and paste some Leiden, maybe add all the line numbers, and not much else. You might have to fix a couple of lacunas and fix a couple of abbreviations, but the vast majority of it will be exactly the same as the Leiden. The one thing which I haven't talked about yet, where the Leiden on line 5, so this isn't really Leiden. This asterisk in parentheses, this is not Leiden. This is just a footnote marker in Papyri.info. It's saying we've commented on that word Kelius somewhere below, and because there is no Leiden for expressing in line that Kelius is the way the word was written, but that a modern editor would expect to read it in another way, we have to use something beyond Leiden to represent that information in Leiden Plus. So that Kelius you see on the left, there in the footnote below, in the Apparatus criticus below, you'll see that on line 5, in the text Kelius, for which read, L dot there stands for lege, for which read Kelius. Okay, and to represent that in Leiden Plus, we put the Kelius in this convention with this angle bracket and then colon at either end. We say Kelius on the left, that's the regularized form, that's what reg here means, and then Kelius, the unregularized form. This is the version that you see in the text because it's conventional in papyrology to leave the unregularized form in the text and put the regularized form in the Apparatus criticus on the right hand side of this construct. And this is a fairly I mean, I say it's fairly simple. It's not as simple as just putting square brackets around something, but it's much more simple than the XML equivalent, for example, of this way to represent regularization of a text, of a piece of text. The last example I want to give is the one that we're going to be using today in the example, and this is when you want to record apparatus information, and in a minute Marja is going to explain to us what we mean by this, but just for one example of it here, in one text, which again I should have written which text this is, we have two pieces of apparatus, but the second piece in here, the one that I've marked in blue, is saying that in the text we read opter, and this is not that it's written one thing on the papyrus and we read it a different way. What this means this time is that we now read the text as opter, but a previous editor read it a different way. And they didn't actually read the text a different way, but because it's a very minor change. But we now read it as opter, and so this apparatus is telling us two things. First thing it's telling us is that this reading, opter, comes from BL 13270. Again, Marja will explain what BL is in a minute. It's the second thing it's telling us is that the previous editor read this as opter, as the name, right, as the proper name with a capital O, whereas we now read it, since BL 13, we read it as opter, as a common word. So here's how this is marked up in Leiden Plus. It's very similar to the regularization construct you saw before. So the word opter, the new reading, the good reading that we like, is there on the left. I guess the best reading is not always the newest, but in this case, it is. The reading that we like is there on the left. We say it's from BL 13270, as it says in the apparatus there, after an equal sign. We have the word ed in the middle to say this is an editorial correction, and then the old reading is there on the right. This is all plain text, right? So the colors are just there to remind us what's going on. If you're interested, if you're not interested, close your eyes for about 10 seconds. If you're interested, this is what the epidoc looks like for the equivalent piece of information. You can see it's quite a lot longer. You have to have an app around the whole feature to say this is an apparatus entry. You then have a lem saying this is the one we keep in the text, the good one, and then we have a reading saying this is another reading, an older one most likely, and we've put a resp on the lem to say who came up with that new reading. It wasn't me. It was I'm taking it from someone else in there. To summarize, this is just, I think this is my final slide, just to say this is what we will be doing with when we're entering Apparatus in Papyri.info. We'll be saying here the reading that's already in the text is here in the previous reading, and we will simply be putting around it this construct, which has this colon and angle brackets at the beginning and end, and with pipe, ed, pipe in the middle, and then on the left we'll take the good reading from our source, and we'll say what that source is with after an equal sign, and we can also give a source for the previous reading, but we tend not to, because the previous reading is usually the original edition, the editorial princeps, but we can do, if you want to, you can also put a source for the previous reading in there. I think, yes, that is my final slide. I will stop there, and I think handing over to Marja for a bit more context before we get our hands dirty. You're still muted, Marja.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. So I will now try to share my screen again, and let's see what happens. So I shared a different screen now. Maybe you can see my slides now.
Okay, I'm currently still seeing your StreamYard window.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's not working like this either. So, Gabby,
do you want me to show you the slides?
Yes, if you can.
Here they are.
Right, thanks. So go ahead to the first proper slide. So what is a papyrological apparatus criticus? Well, you already saw some parts of it. In Papyri.info, we usually have these 4 things in the apparatus. So the thing that is below the text, showing some extra info for the transcription of the papyrus text we see. So we can have there orthographic regularizations, which was something that Gabby just showed you. So there are a couple of examples. So we have something that's sort of non-standard orthographically or linguistically, and then there is somebody who has suggested that the standard or the more normal, more common, more recognizable form is something else, which is marked there in green in these 2 examples. So enaku is with epsilon instead of alpha iota, and then frondison written with tau instead of frondison, and epsilon. There's actually 2 orthographic things going on. So there is epsilon iota written instead of iota, and d delta written instead of tau. So we would see in the apparatus L dot frondison lege. So read a better reading, recognize a more normal form. That's what it stands for. This is, of course, sometimes also a question of interpretation. What is standard, and some editors treat this in a slightly different way, but that's a topic of another lecture. And these are important for us, that these are up to date, of course, so that we can study the text as they are and understand them, what the words actually are. So when we are, like in my project, we are trying to find out linguistic variation. So these are important entries for us. And then in the apparatus, we can have alternative readings. So there are editors are not always certain what something is, so they are perhaps suggesting many different things. And then we can mark scribal corrections there, alterations made by the ancient scribe. So it's sometimes visible there that the scribe wrote something first and then crossed it over, for example, and corrected it to something else. And then we might have there's information like that there is some sort of symbol attached to the word, so like a dialysis trema. In printed papyrus editions, we may have much more information in the apparatus. So there, the apparatus criticus, which the term is familiar to you in the literary editions, perhaps, where you can see different editors giving different interpretations of the original text by comparing different manuscripts. So they are very much referring to the research done by the text on the text. Sometimes you have this kind of information in papyrus editions, in the printed ones, but that we don't normally have in the Papyri.info electronic form. Can you go to the next slide? There we have the one example, which was something I might have shown you as the demo today, but might be that we won't do that today. But this is a edition P. Meyer 8 from year 1916. And you can see that in the apparatus there's first a transcription, and the apparatus has quite a lot of detailed information. I'm not going to go through those all, and I cannot now point you with this mouse, but for example, in the left-hand side for line 12, there is an entry for, let's first look at line 10, and in the apparatus below, you can see that there is hamate with the name Vilken beneath it. So we have hamate in the transcription, but then in the apparatus, it has been mentioned that this reading has been given to this edition by Ulrich Vilken. And then the next entry in the apparatus for that is for line 12. There is lege ek legomeno. So in the text we have egg with a gamma, and it has been suggested to regularize, normalize with ek with a kappa. So similar entry that I showed previously. So this is more elaborate apparatus. And if you look at the right-hand side text, the first line there is autoi te un, and then there is a big gap, and genameno, and that would be the practice demo part that we might be looking at today. But can you quickly go with the link to see the text in Papyrus.info? So there, when you scroll down and look at the apparatus, there you see that you have the line 12 lege ek legomeno inserted there. So it's taken from the edition, but then it doesn't have those details that I just mentioned that somebody has, that Vilken has fetched there something. But there we already have some Berichtigungsliste entries, BL1, from BL1. So that's something we will be looking at more closely today. So can you go to the slides again? Difficult to find them.
Sorry, I've lost them. Give me a second.
Yes.
No. No. Where haven't they gone? Sorry about this. There they are. Sorry. Yep.
Yes, and then the next slide. So, what is the Berichtigungsliste, the mysterious acronym BL? So, a list of corrections, list of emendations for the Greek documentary papyri. Sorry, Gabby, this is animated, so you need to click through. Thank you. So it's a list gathering corrections proposed for the published Greek papyri, although I was surprised to have this word Greek there. This is a sentence copied from the website. Maybe we do have also corrections listed there that are for Latin and Latin papyri. Am I right, James? You can confirm.
Perhaps. Yes, you are correct. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they are collected from articles published in different periodicals or in other publications that have appeared after the first publication. So it's a convenient tool for us that we don't need to read all the journals to know what's happening with some text, but it's very, very helpful for us. And it consists of 13 volumes, started from 1913, and the latest volume 13 was published in 2017. So it's an ongoing thing. And for those, there are 2 concordance volumes for volumes 1 to 7, and then the second from volume 8 to volume 11. And there is a link also in our GitHub page, but here as well for the Berichtigungsliste website, where you have the whole list of the volumes and a bit more information. And then, yes, the volume 13 is downloadable in PDF form from the BL website directly. For the other ones, you will see later what you can have. Yes, so going to the previous example, continuing from that. So there was an article written by Naftali Lewis in publication that was called P. Thomas. So it was a festschrift for David Thomas, published in 2001, and he suggested one restoration for the gap on line 14 that we saw just a minute ago. So here it is the, he says in the text up there that here is the relevant text. He is discussing an issue with this text and reprinting part of the text in this publication, and he's saying that the restoration in line 14 is mine and the rest are Meyer's, so they come from the old edition. So here we have one suggestion for correction for a lacuna there, so just a sort of emendation, but still something that it would be nice to have in the Papyri.info as well, and not just the gap that we had there. Can you click a couple of times? Yes, thank you. So for that, we now have in the Berichtigungsliste volume 12 on page 118 entry that says, for the entire document, it says that for the interpretation, look at P. Thomas, pages 25 to 27. And then for the lines 14 to 15, it's saying that there is this is to be supplied, and gives this supplement that Naftali Lewis suggested. It's not referring to this article, it's referring to, it's referring to this article, but not by name of Naftali Lewis, but it's just saying the book where you can find it. And when we enter this to Papyri.info, then we are actually referring to the Berichtigungsliste because it's shorter and more convenient. Of course, we could do it this way, the other way as well, so that we just refer to this article. But it's a good practice now to use the Berichtigungsliste entries for that. And I didn't have any more slides, so I think we can go and see the demos of how this actually works.
Great, thank you. Yes, so yes, Lucia is going to give us our first demo, I think.
Yes. So first of all, we sign in with Google. This is to give proper attribution to user contributions. And then we look for the papyrus in which we want to add a correction. A way is to use its Trismegistos number, a unique identifier. In this case, okay, so this example concerns a papyrus published as Pioxy 1879, which preserves a report of proceedings for death brought before the governor of the Egyptian province of Arcadia. The body of the document is written in Greek, whereas the opening and the conclusion, which include the name and the title of the governor, are in Latin. The title of the governor has been the object of a correction, in particular within the mention of the province of Arcadia, as registered in the 12th volume of the BL. In line 3, the previous editors read the sequence of letters ARCAD and interpreted it as an abbreviation of the word Arcadia, Arcadie, obtained by omitting the final part of the word after the letter D, as indicated in the edition by adding the omitted letters in round brackets. But more recently, two scholars pointed out that the sequence of letters should be read ARC, again an abbreviation for Arcadie, followed by the letter D, which they explain as an abbreviation of the word Dixit, he said, whose subject is the governor, mentioned earlier. And by the same token, the scholars integrate their reading, Arcadie Dixit, in the lacuna in line 9. So we open the editor to add the correction.
Sorry, Lucia, could you make the font a little bit bigger, just so we can see a little bit better?
Yes. Is it okay now?
That's wonderful, thank you.
Then we click on Leiden Plus in Duke Databank text. We select, this is the word, Arcadie. Then we can use the helper in Papyri.info, and we can copy and paste the code to add the BL correction. Now we edit it with the right form. And we also edit the previous incorrect form. And the same applies to the line 9. And we also edit the volume and the page number of the BL of our source. And the same applies to line 9. Okay, now we can save. We may add what type of correction we did.
This is a really useful thing to show now. What happens if you make a Leiden plus error before you, when you're trying to save? It will tell you, and it'll tell you roughly where it is.
Okay, anyway.
Do you see where the error is, Lucia, or did you do it on purpose? Or?
No, actually, I'm sorry, but...
So the error is the angle bracket colon at the beginning and end of the apparatus thing is missing in line 9. You copied the content, but not the angle bracket.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So now we can save. Then we go to the publication overview, and we describe the submission. Now we can submit our contribution to the editorial board. Okay.
Great. And if this were a slightly longer session, we would have James in the background being the editorial board and accepting that correction, and we'd be able to see it all accepted later. When we do this in in-person workshops, we often get on the phone to James and say, okay, can you accept that correction so the students can see what's happened? But you'll have to take our word for it that sooner or later that will be looked at by the editorial board, and it will either be accepted or it'll be further edited by them.
You won't have to do so because the change around is in about 15 minutes, so we'll be able to show it.
Okay, so we could have another look at that in 15 minutes. Cool.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, Marja, did you want to give us another walkthrough of the cool example you had, or one of your examples?
I can try.
If it'll let you share your screen, yeah.
Yeah, actually.
If you could do that Maya one that you were talking about, that would be quite nice because you would have to go across a line end if you want a challenge.
I thought I start with an easy one, and then we'll see if we go. So, Gabby, you see now my. Okay.
Yep.
You
Can
see.
you make the font larger, please?
Yes. But Okay, but it's again not doing anything in the...
we're not seeing it happen. You might need to make it unshare it and reshare it with the font that size.
But it's there is still something wrong with my sharing. So then I would have wanted to also show you the...
Do you want to flick between different screens? Yeah. Shall I do an example instead then to make it?
I have another tab, Acrobat Reader tab over it now, but you're not seeing it. So.
Which we're not seeing, yeah.
Are you now seeing it?
No, we're just seeing Papyrological as before, yeah.
Yes. So there is something wrong in my sharing settings. Yeah. I cannot pinpoint what it is. I'm very sorry about this.
That does make it hard to see, doesn't it? Yeah. Shall I just do my example first then, and then
okay.
Then we'll see how we're looking for time at that point. Okay, no problem. Okay, so I've got an example. I'm going to take. Let me see. Where's my screen? You probably can't see this very well, which is just as well. But this is a spreadsheet that James created as a cheat sheet for people to very easily find BL corrections. And I've picked one from here, which I'm specifically picking one that's a little bit problematic, so that James can give me some advice when I'm actually entering it. But what we have here, if I can,
Gabby, can you give me the number while you just?
Yeah, I will. Yes, it's
P London.
It's P Lond 3 1259 line 8.
1259. Okay.
I'll make this a little bit bigger. So
yeah, I've got it. Yeah, I've got it.
But so what this says is that it says TOC parentheses space close parentheses von Tokos question mark editor princeps index. So the text only gave TOC, but the index said von Tokos question mark. And then Vannini has suggested Tokadon as a better reading for that. Actually, it's not big enough for you to be able to see that on the screen, is it? Okay, now you can maybe see it on the screen. Those of you watching. So the original edition said TOC. The index said maybe this is from Tokos, and Vannini said Tokadon. Okay, so I find this text in Papyri.info. Let's make that a little bit larger again. And that was, what line did I say that was on? That was 8. On line 8. So here on line 8, we do in fact have Tokon question mark, which suggests to me, and there's nothing in the apparatus about this. So what this suggests to me is that either Papyri.info entered another edition that had improved that text, or the editor of the Duke databank, many years ago when they entered this, before it made its way into Papyri.info, said, TOC must be Tokon, because as the index says, it is from Tokos, and the context here requires it to be in the genitive plural. So I'm just going to enter Tokon question mark invisibly.
That will be what happened, yes.
That's what I'm guessing happened, and there's nothing in the apparatus to say that happened. So when I want to correct this from Tokon to Vannini's reading Tokadon, I might actually enter both of those things somehow. Let's just check that I can do that. So I'll do that step by step. So I'm going to do as Lucia did. I'm going to go to Open in Editor. I'm already logged in. So it's created a new publication here, and I'm going to go into the Leiden plus of the Duke databank text. And is this large enough to read? I'll make it just a little bit larger. And this is, let's go back to line 8. So it currently just says Tokon question mark, which is the Duke databank reading. So here's my question, James. Shall I just say that Tokon is the previous reading and give Vannini's reading, or shall I say Tokon is the Duke databank's reading, the editor princeps' reading was just TOC, and Vannini's reading was something else? How complex do we want this to be?
I think if you do the latter, it's quite good because it shows how you can give two Berichtigung or two different readings.
Two different previous readings, right? Okay.
Exactly, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so because I'm not using the helper that that Lucia was using, I'm just going to do this from memory. You might again need to remind me if I make any mistakes in the Leiden Plus. So I'm just going to copy the add-on from here, as that's what we see. And so what we want in here is, where are we here? Before we get the talk in there, what we want is, in here we're going to put the newer reading that I've just copied. I'm going to have to correct the Leiden Plus in a moment. That's just Leiden at the moment. And we say that that is BL 12.
104.
Page, that was 104.
104.
104. And that is an editorial correction. And then when we have two previous readings, do we say there's one, another pipe, there's the other?
Very good, yes.
And then close it? Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
Okay, and so the original reading we had was just talk, space, parens. Shall I include von Tokos?
Nope.
No, just the talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we're not interested in what they said in the index. So the original reading was just talk. And is there any point putting in a source?
Yes, I think you might as well put in an equal sign there, and that allows people to see.
Due data bank? Or what?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, leave it like that for the moment.
So we say, so we're correcting, or we're saying rather that the most recent and the good text that we like is Tocado, and let me just correct that abbreviation into Leiden Plus. Remember, there's a second set of parentheses around it, unlike in plain Leiden. So BL 12104 gives Tocado. The Duke Databank gave Tok-on, maybe, and the Edition Princeps gave Tok. That's what I think I've said here. Let's see what Papyri.info thinks I've said. If I press save, there's an error. What do we think the error is, James? Is it the way the empty abbreviation is tagged?
No, you would need to put extra round brackets at the beginning and the end of the word.
Even on an empty abbreviation.
Well, that's one way of doing it, but the better way of doing it would be to open a round bracket and then use a pipe, and then
inside.
Nope. In front of the tab.
Okay. So then,
correct.
It's like this.
Correct. Yes.
Sweet.
And that's a nice thing to show to people, because that's a way of showing we know that TOC is abbreviated, probably with a squiggly little stroke, but we don't know what it is going to be.
We don't know what it extracts to. Fantastic. Okay. This is what you're seeing here. My suddenly discovering that this is how you do it is because since James and I were involved in the invention of Leiden Plus 12 years ago or so, this encoding, I think, has changed, and I've or either that or I just forgot it. But I think it's changed, and this is not how I originally learned it. It's now saying there's an error still.
Yes, that does strike me as strange.
Do we need a second pipe?
No, definitely not. No. Definitely not that.
Shall I check the helper for
yeah, I think the helper will not help you with the entry of two different. Oh well, no, the editorial thing would help you, but not the actual instructions for BL entry.
Are you sure we don't need multiple pipes around ed?
Oh yes, I beg you. Around that ed, yes, you're right. Yes, that's it.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, that's it. So because the pipe is used to separate, to differentiate between the second reading and the third reading, having just single pipes around the word ed, because ed could in theory be a reading, right? So to show that ED is actually the code saying this is an editorial correction, we have to put two pipes right at the beginning and end of that. So, okay, now when I press save, everything goes green. Yes, it's working. Let's just check it. So it's not being recognized as invalid, but let's check that it's giving us what we expect it to give us. So I'm going to go to the preview, and we see on line 8, Tocado, that's how we're now reading it. And then there's a link to the apparatus, and the apparatus says, this reading that you've just seen, Tocado, is from BL 12-104. Tocone, question mark, was given by the Duke Databank, and Toc by the previous editor before that. That all seems right now, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, fantastic. So I'm just going to go straight to the overview, and I'm going to say entered BL12 correction, credited to Vannini. I always think it's rude not to credit Vannini, so I'm putting it in here even if it's not appearing in the apparatus itself. Made explicit the Duke Databank expansion of the original edition. And just to help out the person who's going to deal with this, I'm going to say this is line 8. Submit to boards. Takes a few seconds, and it's submitted. Which again will be looked at by the editors sometime, I suppose.
Yeah. And probably because we've been talking, the fact that Lucia's correction will be visible is no longer the case because I've missed the cutoff time.
So because you didn't approve it immediately after she did that. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm afraid it won't be visible this time around.
Okay. Apologies for that then.
Not at all.
for my having a complicated one, asking James lots of questions. Marja, do you think you fixed your screen issue? Or is there just one way to find out?
There's just one way to find out.
So we're seeing Leiden Plus.
Are you seeing?
Oh no, we're seeing your StreamYard window.
Now, reach you, mine? Is it moving?
I can see your mouse, but I can't see anything else moving.
And are you now seeing a PDF?
Nope, we're seeing exactly what we were seeing to start with.
Yes, so the same problem.
So it's the same problem. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. We've seen two examples. We could see more. I mean, we've got a bit more time if we want it, but we could also have any discussion. If anyone watching live wants to leave any comments, please feel free to. But I don't think there are a huge number of people watching live. I think more people will watch this later. But if you do leave comments in the live chat, we will see them appearing on our screen, and we can address them. Is there anything else anyone thinks it's worth raising as a way of doing this? I guess one question is that I can imagine someone asking that we haven't answered yet. Is this looks great? I would really like to help. I would like to enter a dozen or 100 BL corrections for you, or maybe just one to start with, just to check I can do it. Corrections for you, but where do I find them? You all have these really nice digital editions. Gabby showed me a spreadsheet. Lucia had some stuff copied and pasted. Marja had a PDF. Some people might have the book in front of them, but where do I find those corrections? How do I know which ones are already in and which ones are not? How do I find one to enter? I'm imagining that that's somebody's question.
Yes, I think we need to show the what we have a link to now in the session GitHub.
So
the BL12 entries, and there you had a very nice link also to the in the beginning of that file, there's the Beehive link where you have all the corrections of BL12.
So here is the spreadsheet, which is shared in the session page. Which again, if you're watching this on YouTube, the link to the session page is below the video. And so this is a spreadsheet which James created for us today. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, so maybe someone could tell me what it contains.
So if you don't have this book at hand or a PDF, there is the link, the Beehive link there in the first. Then take a look at that. So the entries in the BL are to be found there, and you can also then use this for copying and pasting if you are making what you want in your angle bracket, inside your angle brackets.
Cool. And the content in this spreadsheet, which is linked in the session page, are things that are already in Papyri.info, if I understand correctly. So these are not things that you will add. This is just to give you some examples of what the XML looks like. Is that correct?
Yeah, what the XML looks like, and also to avoid people opening that spreadsheet or opening the the digital copy of BL12 and thinking, oh, this looks nice, I'll enter it, and then calling it up and finding out, oh, it's actually been entered before. So, but if people are looking for it, and indeed it marked in green, I said starting from page 155 is a good starting point, because from about there onwards, a lot of the things have not been entered yet. So that is where somebody could start if they were interested in doing it.
Okay, and what you look for is this little arrow, which tells you the text on the left has been corrected by someone to the text on the right of the arrow. And you're saying to ignore, for now, ignore anything that also has the words wohl or vielleicht in there.
Exactly, because that makes the markup, makes the markup just a little bit more tricky. And the other thing to say is that there are a whole host of corrections in the Berichtigungsliste which concern date or provenance or something of that sort, and those can be entered, but that's a completely different topic.
We're ignoring those for now. So it's only ones that have some text. Greek, an arrow, and some more Greek, or Latin, an arrow, or I guess in some cases Coptic. But,
very little of that.
99% of them will be Greek. So some text, some papyrological text, an arrow, some more papyrological text saying X has been corrected to Y by an editor. But we don't normally record who the editor is. We record that this is BL12 telling us.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so these are lots of things that are already done, and if you go to the Beehive thing, you can look for one that is not on that list. And I guess if you scroll down these, you find one here. So I guess that's probably already been done. So we want to go to page.
You can go and look at the P. Meyer, and we can do it all together.
Where do I find Meyer?
I think you could probably just do a search for Meyer, can't you?
Yeah.
Okay. There was a space after the full stop, which meant I didn't find it, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Just to P. Meyer. Okay, so these could be some stuff in P. Meyer.
So there is for the whole document, there is for the interpretation, you look at this, but that's actually because there is a link to this article in the, if you open up the Papyri.info page, then you see that there is a link to this, link to the information of this article. But then the entry was concerning lines 14 and 15.
And which P. Meyer was this?
8.
Meyer 8.
So you saw that.
Lines 14 to 15.
So there is a gap.
So it's lacuna and then it's ending in namino.
Yeah, but to be honest, since we have the genomenoi there already, basically the correction concerned only line 14, what's before genomenoi.
Right.
So two words. In fact, it doesn't concern, the entry doesn't need to concern the line break.
No, it doesn't, but it makes for pleasanter reading if you take the phrase as a whole. I think that's what I would say there.
Right.
And certainly in terms of the little star that will be produced, I think it's probably better to do it that way. But you can argue one way or t'other, yeah.
So Gabriel, do you want to go ahead and try to do that?
You want me to do this?
Well, I can.
Yeah. Okay, hang on. So this is what he's corrected it to. Okay, again, remembering how to do line breaks is something that that James may need to remind me of as we go.
Yeah, but that's
okay,
that's what I thought would be quite nice with this example, because it just shows you a line break.
So I've opened Maya 8 in editor. I'm going to Leiden Plus. I want line 14 to 15. Okay, and so we're replacing. Does this also impact on the illegible letter?
Yeah, there's an eta with a dot under.
Yes.
And well, in fact, it's including the un as well. So let's just take the whole thing.
Again, that probably makes things just slightly clearer if you include the un. Yes.
Okay, so we've got that. We're going to have a new reading, which is equal BL 12. What line?
113.
104.
Was this 13? It was 8. It was 12. 104.
No, beg your pardon. No, Maria's right. It's what is it?
118.
118. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, 12.118. It's an editorial correction from un to amenoi. And what we're putting on the left of that is, sorry, wrong place. After the colon, un hemes apparoi ge namanoi. And so that vertical line, which means a line break, we just replace that with 15 dot to show that that's a line break, and a hyphen and a space. James? Oh, James is gone. Oh well, I guess I'll press save and see whether it's an error. It doesn't look like an error. Preview. Line 14 to 15. Okay, line 15 has gone and it's turned into 15 in the text. So I guess I did make an error.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't flagged as invalid, but it was bad nevertheless. So I guess I did need a space after the hyphen. Let's try that. Let's preview. Oh, here's James back. Hi, James.
Hi.
I was just asking you whether I'd done something right, and as you were gone, I just pressed preview and it was wrong. So, but I think it's now fixed. So it now says
that looks right.
Un eges aporoi genamenoi. And then in the apparatus it says that's from BL12. The previous editor said un dot and then 11 characters and then dash genomenoi. Doesn't. Oh yes, it does. There's explicit
That's
line break
explicit
there.
line break. Yeah.
And if we hover over it, it says current edition gives, previous edition gave. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Cool.
this was something I would have done differently, because I would have only taken the two words that correction actually was sort of changing and not the phrase.
Yeah.
I understand that, yes, you might want to have that sort of phrase in totality when you are reading, but when we are then thinking about the words in themselves, I mean, it seems redundant to have more words there.
Yeah, yes, yes. It's a matter of which viewpoint you come from. And in terms, I tend to come from what I know people like to see, so that it makes it a bit clearer to them, because otherwise they get confused often enough. But yes, I can see how what you're saying can also make perhaps more sense. Yes.
Who was this?
This
It was in
is
Thomas, wasn't it? Who was the editor?
Natalie Lewis.
Natalie Lewis. Have I correctly spelled that?
Yes.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's submitted to the boards then. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's worth thinking about, is that what Marja would have done instinctively, which I think is what I would have done instinctively as well, is just entered the words that were changed. James, however, is thinking 2 steps ahead, like the good chess player he is, and says, you know, when someone comes along and reads the final version of this, and they look at the Apparatus criticus, they'll see the whole phrase if you do it this way, and that makes a nicer Apparatus entry, something nicer for us all to look at.
It makes it maybe slightly more intuitive.
Yeah.
And understandable for many who are less interested in the sort of nitty-gritty of exactly which letters and which words.
Especially as these are fairly long lines, and I guess the in particular, this is the original text, isn't it? Yeah. So these are fairly long lines. If you're editing a text where it's saying, you know, correct the word chi in line 7, and you look at line 7 contains 3 chi's, it'll be really useful to keep a word next to it as well, so people can figure out which chi you're talking about. Yeah?
That's the other point. Yes, I mean, and the other thing is that little star breaks square brackets, and can introduce a square bracket where you would not be expecting to see a square bracket. All those silly little things that can make you take a decision one way one time and a different way the next time.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid there is no hard and fast rule for things of that sort, so it's going to be very inconsistent. Not necessarily inaccurate. I certainly wouldn't want to say that, but it's not consistent in the way it's been done.
Yeah. So we have a question in the live chat from YouTube. Vivian asks, do we have full access to that Beehive link, or does someone need to sign in? I didn't sign in, so I assume everyone has full access.
Anybody who's got that link can use that. It is open.
And that link is in the session page, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
Lucia added it for us. Yes.
So where exactly is that? Hang on, I'm just looking at the session page.
It's the
link to the Google spreadsheet, and there.
The link to the spreadsheet is in there, and then the link to Beehive is in the Google spreadsheet. Yeah, we could be a little bit friendlier and put the link to
okay,
Beehive
yes, that's true. Yes,
in there as well.
In there as well. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. But I'll add that later. But yes, I mean, if you open the spreadsheet, which again I didn't need to log into, or did I?
No,
anyone with the
because
link can access.
I've changed the thingies on there.
So yeah, Vivian, you should have full access. If you don't, you have my email, and we can chase up James and find out why.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, that's good. I guess in 3 months' time, if someone comes across this video, I'm just continuing my previous question, and wants to enter something, and several other people have entered things in the meantime because they were having fun, this spreadsheet will no longer be up to date. So it's just
correct. Yeah.
The other thing you'll have to do is just look in Papyri.info, and you'll see the change I'm expecting to make is already in there. Find another one.
Yes, and it's perhaps worth saying that if you find a correction that you feel that you would like to enter, then you should go to Papyri.info and then you should scroll down to the bottom of it and see, can I find that BL12 reference? And if you can, then you know that it's been entered.
That's the
If you
quickest way.
can't,
Right.
then please go ahead and we'll be very happy to have extra work being done for us.
Yeah. Right. No, that's a good point. I'm going to just going to remake that point. Rather than looking at this and saying, okay, there at the end of line 14 is the old text I'm expecting to see, not the new text I'm expecting to enter, which might be a little bit confusing, as in the case that I showed earlier with TOC, where the text in Papyri.info was not actually the text I was expecting to see. What you're actually looking for is down here in the apparatus. If you see a reference to BL12, it's probably already been entered. I don't see any reference to BL12 anywhere. I see references to BL1, which is, from 100 years earlier. So it's clearly not been entered yet. That's a much quicker and more efficient way to check whether
and maybe Gabby, since you're showing your screen, could I ask you please to go to the Poxy to scroll right up to the top there and go to DDB and go to Poxy and go to volume 16. And type in the number 1876. No, 1879, beg your pardon, 1879. Now, that was the thing that, the one that Lucia very kindly showed to us. And I would ask you now to have a look at it, because I don't think it has come through. Go scroll down to the bottom so that you can see the apparatus. No, it hasn't come through. Okay, so we think we're going to do that now. Open it in the editor, Gabby, please. And when we open it in the editor, scroll right down to the bottom, and you'll be told, I hope anyway, right down to the bottom. Oh, no, you won't be told, really, because normally I would expect down there to say, this text was opened an hour ago by Lucia Vannini. And I'm quite surprised that that's not showing up, actually. I don't quite know why. It should have been showing up. Maybe that service has gone broken.
Maybe because it's already been finalized?
It may be, yes, maybe. Because certainly what we try to do is that if you scroll down to the bottom and see that somebody has already opened that text, and maybe just a week ago or something of that sort, then that gives you an email and you can write to that person and say, I'd like to be putting in the BL12 corrections. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
So, to try to avoid duplication.
The other thing you can see in here is under XML comments, you can see that on November 10th, Lucia Vannini added BL correction, so you can actually see that there. And so long as she made that useful comment in there, which
and you can see there that I have already finalized that text. Yeah. It's not
finalized it at 12:03. I guess that's
1803
North Carolina time.
Yeah.
And at some point the text will appear. So I don't want to actually edit this. Do I have to hit delete to
yes, that's another good thing that you can show. You can just say delete.
So when I say I'm going to edit this, what it actually does, you can't see it at the top anymore because it was in green. It said the new publication has been created. And what that means is that they've made a copy of that file, which I can then edit. And only when I submit it does that copy get merged back into the original copy. So until then, it is a new text. And so when I say delete, I'm not deleting this record from Papyri.info, I'm just deleting my new copy that I made, which I've now decided I don't want to edit because I can see that Lucia has already made the BL correction. So hitting delete just says, do you want to delete this publication? It will only delete your copy, but it cannot be undone. So I'll say yes.
And it's important to note that by saying delete there, it's only your copy on your home dashboard. It's not destroying the system in the slightest.
Yeah. And so I've deleted it, and back here, it's still there. It does still exist. The change still hasn't come through. But anyway, I guess we won't stay on for 15 minutes just to see it come through.
No, because we'd be staying on for about another 40 minutes.
Oh, right. Okay, then that's not. Then good.
Can I ask Berichtigungsliste related question. I am wondering, because we have now talked about Berichtigungsliste volume 12 and 13, because those are the newest ones, and they are the ones that are not, for example, in the concordances, where you can find them more easily. But, well, two questions. Are there some systematic entries for the old BL entries so that we can trust so that some of the BL entries are there, or are all the old ones also something that we need to check if they are there? The second question, is there volume 14? When do we have that?
First question, systematic entries. How did you mean that? Can you?
I mean, up to some number of volumes have all the BL entries in Papyri.info done in a sort of irregular manner, or are there up to some volume all the entries done?
It's you can't assume that everything from Berichtigungsliste for any given text has been edited in toto. No, because, and if you got 3 papyrologists, some would say I wouldn't bother taking that BL correction because I don't believe it, and so there's always a selection. So that I think that's probably the best way of answering your question. Unfortunately, it's still the case that if we, well, maybe not unfortunately, it's probably just how it should be in a scholarly fashion. If you are reading a text in Papyri.info, you've got to remember it's a tool, it's a helping tool, it's not the truth about that text. You've got to go and look at all the things the way that we always used to do in Berichtigungsliste, just to check that there isn't a better reading for line 6. And very often if there's a better reading for line 6, then it's even nicer if you as a scholar then say, okay, this really is a better reading. It's not been entered yet. I'll enter it now. And for the next person coming along, they will then have a better version of the text. And that's why this whole system is open source and open to everybody to try to let everybody pile in and improve our resources. Berichtigungsliste 14, certainly not anytime soon, and the whole business of how Berichtigungsliste will continue in the future is not clear to me. I spoke about this in Paris at the Papyrology Congress, as you'll remember, Marja, and we don't really have the manpower to continue in the way that used to be done in the past. A lot of the corrections to texts can be entered directly from the journal articles or the book articles that one reads through, and can be attributed then to the people who made those corrections. And then that's nicer, going back to what Gabby had spoken about, where you actually say this correction was made by G. Bodard, and it was made on page 25 by G. Bodard in the Festschrift for Alan Thompson. So that's a way of doing it. And the business of the Berichtigungsliste was always the business of trying to collect everything from the year 2010 through to the year 2014, and trying to go through all books published in papyrology, all articles and all that sort of stuff. We are standing up and being measured, and hope that we've made a good job of doing it for all of 2010 through to 14. That is the thing that I see as being a real challenge now, because we don't have the teams of people. We used to be teams of about 3 or 4 people who were dedicated to doing that and being paid to do that. We don't have that anymore. So I'm afraid BL 14, no, I cannot treat you and say in 3 months' time it'll be on your desk. It certainly won't.
Well, thank you. Well, it was just a question for, getting this open. and also mentioning that, well, when you learn how to do the BL correction to Papyri.info, you can, in the same manner, do any kind of correction in journals. So you don't need to wait for things to come in BL, but you can make the corrections from articles. And best practice, of course, would be that the person who is suggesting something in an article, then when it's published, might just go and enter it in the Papyri.info as well.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, if you perhaps, Gabby, I could ask you to go to the Sunaikisis thing with other resources. If I can ask you to click on that, and then I can show people how this has been made, I think, clear in our Leiden Plus help sections. So if I could ask you to bring up the SunoikisisDC 20 thing and go down to the bottom there. And now it says, where does it say? Papyri.info's directions for Berichtigungsliste corrections. Could you click on that, please? And that will take you directly through to that. And if you scroll down slowly, please, journal article corrections, there it is. And that's exactly what Marja has been talking about. And there we say in the Leiden Plus equals N Gonis, Nick Gonis in London, and he published that correction in ZPE 160 from the year 2008 on page 268. And he has corrected Aurelius to Antoninus. And then to get this in PN preview, that is what would be displayed down in the apparatus. And that is certainly something that a number of people are now doing much more regularly in the way that Marja suggested. Maybe Marja writes an article and she makes 3 corrections. The article is printed, and then she goes into Papyri.info and says m.Vierros archive or whatever it may be from such and such a time, page 75, and gives the readings.
Is it still feasible and desirable that someone might say, this is such a minor correction, there's no point writing an article about it, but I'd still like to put it in Papyri.info, and they could put something in without it having previously been published?
Absolutely. And again, if you scroll down slightly further to a little, there we are, PNPE correction. And that example there is an example of a scholar who made a correction. We can actually go and look at that if we want. The example link is given, CPR 682, and there Graham Claytor looked at the image, and instead of nothing that had been read on the original edition, he could read the word tu. Instead of kai ex argulismu, he reads kai tu ex argulismu. And there's a nice example going back to what we were talking about earlier, Marja, where indeed nothing has been changed into tu rather than changing kai ex argulismu into kai tu ex argulismu. So shows you the inconsistency.
I guess with there being only 1 2 in there, it's not unclear. But yes, some people might have
done it the other way around.
Tu ex argulismu is a phrase, and therefore it's useful to include the whole thing.
And if you can go back to the PNPE, the way of doing it, the thing that is important there is after the equals sign, we use PN, which is for Papyrological Navigator, then a white space, and then the initials of the author, and then as we did previously. And that will then change it into a PNPE correction.
And the other difference here is that as well as the bibliography, and well, it's not bibliography because it's just a person, we're also saying a bit of explanation of the grounds on which you're making this. I read this on the plate for Lucia CPR. You could say I read it from the papyrus, or I read it from a microfilm, or I read it from
autopsy, from the original, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Or I asked someone to look at it for me, or whatever. Yeah. Great. Yeah, no, that's really useful. But so the exercise that we're suggesting, if you're following this session as a student, is to go to the Beehive site, find a correction that looks relatively simple. There's some text, an arrow and some text. check that it hasn't already been done. Log into Papyri.info using ideally a Google account, or you can also create an account on the Papyri.info site yourself if you prefer to do it that way. I think that's true, isn't it, James? You don't actually need a Google account. You can do it by creating a password yourself.
Can you now? Maybe, I'm not sure.
I hope so, because there are parts of the world, significant sized parts of the world, where
don't do Google.
Can't access Google. So, including one large chunk, which is about a sixth of the world's population, access Google. Probably not a sixth of the world's papyrologists, but still.
Very few of them, but yes.
But not zero. And then enter that correction. And you don't need to speak to us in order to do so, although you're welcome to. But you will get feedback if there's something horribly wrong in the way you've done that. You will get feedback in response. They will say, no, we're not accepting this correction because you've messed it up. Here's a hint as to how to improve it. And it won't necessarily happen in the next 15 minutes as we were promising here. It may take days or weeks for someone to get around to looking at it, but have a go at it. And if you use preview after you've done after you've saved your Leiden Plus, but before you submit it, then you should be able to see if anything goes horribly wrong. So it should be, nothing will be horrible there. But so please do try that out. Whether you're looking at this today, or whether you're looking at this 6 months after we record this video, or for that matter 5 years after, you're more than welcome to enter some of these corrections into Papyri.info, and at the bottom of the page down here under detailed editorial history. No, I didn't mean detailed editorial history. I meant all editorial history. Your name will appear in that list.
You meant editorial history more, actually.
There we go. Yeah, editorial history. So your name will appear in that list as one of the people who has, even if all you did was transcribing something from a published thing, you've made a change. And if you do a dozen of these, you can also see all the changes that Joshua D. Sosen has ever made, which, as he's one of the editorial board, probably quite a lot, but not as many as Cowie, of course, but quite a few nevertheless. So that's the exercise. Not anything specific additional to that, but just go ahead and try out what we've just demonstrated in the last hour and a half. Anyone else have anything to add? In which case, I'll thank you all again. Thank you, Lucia, Marja, James, and also thanks to Vivian for a question on the chat. And please do join us next week when the SunoikisisDC session will be on Wednesday for a change, where the exercise will be to edit the Digital Classicist Wiki, which uses the MediaWiki platform, and we'll be joined by Paolo Manella and Rosa Larito to look at that. So see you all then, and thanks again. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.